Have you ever looked into your child's eyes and felt like an absolute failure? Mark Evans knew that feeling all too well. For the past 2 years, his life had been a non-stop battle against a mountain of bills that never stopped growing. Ever since his wife passed away, the weight of the entire world rested squarely on his broad, tired shoulders. By day, Mark worked as a heavy machinery operator at a dusty city construction site. By night, he took extra shifts cleaning warehouse floors. His hands were always covered in grease, his back always ached, and his eyes were perpetually bloodshot from lack of sleep. But Mark didn't care about the physical pain. He only cared about his 2 children, 10-year-old Leo and 6-year-old Maya. They were his entire world. But love couldn't pay the rent. One rainy Tuesday evening, Mark sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at a piece of paper that felt like a death sentence. It was a final eviction notice. The bold red letters practically screamed at him. Past due $1,200. Pay within 7 days or vacate the premises. Mark felt a cold wave of panic wash over him. He had already sold his old guitar, skipped his own meals, and worked until his bones clicked. He had absolutely nothing left to give. A heavy, broken sob escaped his throat. He quickly covered his mouth, terrified of waking the children. He didn't want them to see him like this. He wanted them to believe their dad was a superhero who could fix anything. What Mark didn't know was that superheroes don't have secrets in a tiny apartment. Standing just outside the kitchen door, hidden in the shadows of the hallway, was 10-year-old Leo. Leo watched his father's shoulders shake. He saw the tears leaking through his dad's grease-stained fingers. And most importantly, Leo's sharp eyes read the words, "Eviction notice," on the table. Leo didn't say a word. He quietly stepped backward into the darkness, his young heart pounding with fear and determination. 5 days passed like a blur of nightmares. Mark had begged his boss for an advance, but the answer was a cold, firm no. The deadline was only 48 hours away. Walking home in the freezing night air, Mark felt completely numb. He was going to lose their home. He was going to fail his children. He quietly unlocked the front door and stepped into the pitch-black apartment. The silence felt heavy and suffocating. As he always did, Mark walked down the narrow hallway to check on Leo and Maya before heading to bed. He expected to see them fast asleep, buried under their thin blankets. But as he approached their door, he noticed a faint, warm amber glow leaking out from the bottom crack. Mark frowned. It was nearly midnight. He gently pushed the door open, the old hinges giving a soft, low creak. The sight inside the room made Mark freeze in his tracks. Leo and Maya weren't in bed. They were sitting cross-legged on the cold, hard floorboards. In the center of their small circle sat a massive glass pickle jar, completely stuffed to the brim with coins. Piles of pennies, nickels, dimes, and tightly rolled $1 bills were scattered all around them. Little Maya was holding a shiny quarter, carefully wiping it with her pajama sleeve before dropping it into the jar with a loud, "That's 25 more cents, Leo," Maya whispered excitedly, her voice tiny and sweet. "Are we close yet? Is it enough to keep the big bad red paper away?" Leo looked up from a small piece of notebook paper where he was meticulously adding up numbers with a broken pencil. His face was incredibly serious. "We're getting closer, Maya. We just need to keep looking. Tomorrow, we check the supermarket parking lot again for dropped change." Mark's breath caught in his throat. His chest tightened so hard he could barely breathe. He stepped fully into the room, his heavy work boots thudding against the floorboards. "Leo? Maya?" Mark's voice was barely a whisper, cracking with sudden emotion. What are you guys doing up so late? What is all this?" The kids startled at the sound of his voice. Maya immediately hugged the heavy glass jar tightly against her yellow cloud-patterned pajamas, her large blue eyes wide with guilt. Leo stood up quickly, his body tense, looking like a soldier caught off guard. "Dad," Leo stammered, his face flushing. You're home early." Mark walked over and dropped to his knees right there on the dusty hardwood floor. The contrast was heartbreaking. A giant, rugged construction worker in high-visibility gear, kneeling before his 2 small, fragile children. "What is this jar, guys?" Mark asked gently, reaching out to touch the cold glass. "Where did you get all this money?" Leo swallowed hard, looking down at his worn white socks. He knew he couldn't hide the truth anymore. "I saw you crying, Dad," Leo whispered, his voice trembling. 5 days ago. I saw the red paper on the table. I read the word eviction. I know what it means. It means we don't have enough money to live here anymore. It means you're hurting." Mark felt as though a physical fist had punched through his chest. He looked at his 10-year-old son, who was carrying a burden meant only for adults. "So, you started saving," Mark choked out, tears rapidly welling up in his green eyes. "It wasn't just me," Leo said, his voice gaining strength. "Maya helped too. For the last 5 days, we didn't buy lunch at school. We saved our lunch money. And every day after school, we walked around the neighborhood looking under vending machines, in gas station parking lots, and near the car wash. Maya is really good at finding dropped dimes in the grass." Maya reached under the heavy jar and pulled out a crinkled, tear-stained piece of paper. She handed it to Mark with absolute innocence. "We wrote a wish list, Daddy," Maya whispered, "so the angels would know what the money is for." Mark took the paper with trembling, calloused hands. His eyes blurred with tears as he looked at the messy, childlike handwriting. At the top of the page, drawn in shaky crayon, was a picture of the three of them holding hands in front of their apartment building. Beneath the drawing, Leo had written in neat, careful letters, "Our secret wish. 1. Please let us get $1,200 so Daddy doesn't have to cry anymore. 2. Please buy our apartment rent so we don't have to sleep outside. 3. Please give Daddy a day to rest so his back stops hurting. We don't need toys or new clothes. We just want Daddy to be happy again." The words on that simple piece of notebook paper completely broke Mark's heart into a million pieces. A heavy, violent sob tore out of his chest, echoing in the small bedroom. He threw his powerful arms around both Leo and Maya, pulling their small, delicate bodies tightly against his chest. He held them with a desperate, fierce strength, letting his tears fall heavily into his daughter's blonde hair and his son's shoulders. He had spent months believing he was a failure because his pockets were empty. He thought he was failing as a father because he couldn't buy them nice things or live in a beautiful house. But looking at this jar and reading this note, Mark realized something profound. He hadn't failed at all. He had raised the most loving, selfless, and compassionate children a father could ever ask for. His wealth wasn't in his bank account. It was sitting right here on the floorboards of a run-down bedroom. "Oh, my beautiful babies," Mark sobbed, his voice cracking with immense emotional pain and overwhelming love. "I am so sorry. You shouldn't be worrying about this. This is my job, not yours." He pulled back just enough to look into both of their eyes, his hands resting gently on their shoulders. "Listen to me, both of you," Mark said, his voice ringing with absolute certainty. "We are not losing this apartment, and we are never, ever going to sleep outside, I promise you." "But Dad," Leo said, a tear finally slipping down his cheek, "there's only $42.16 in the jar. We tried so hard, but it's not $1,200. Mark forced a massive, watery smile across his face, wiping the tears from Leo's nose. $42 is a fortune, Leo," Mark said softly, "because it shows me how brave my kids are. But tomorrow morning, I am going to take this note and go straight to the Housing Authority office. I will show them how hard my family fights. I will get an extension, or I will find a third job if I have to. But you two are never skipping lunch again. Do you hear me?" Maya wrapped her tiny arms around Mark's neck, squeezing him with all her might. "I love you, Daddy. Don't be sad anymore. I love you more than life itself," Mark whispered, kissing the top of her head. The very next day, Mark did exactly what he promised. He didn't use the kids' $42 to pay the rent. He kept that jar on the kitchen counter as a permanent reminder of their love. Instead, he took their secret wish list to a local community charity organization. When the director of the charity read the heartbreaking note written by the two children, she was moved to tears. Through an emergency assistance program, The charity paid the remaining balance of Mark's rent for the month, giving him the breathing room he so desperately needed. But the biggest change didn't happen in Mark's bank account. It happened in his heart. Mark realized that his children didn't need a perfect life. They just needed a present father. He adjusted his schedule, giving up his late-night cleaning shift on weekends so he could spend Saturdays entirely with Leo and Maya. They didn't have much money, and their meals were still incredibly simple. But the heavy, suffocating silence in the apartment was permanently gone, replaced by the beautiful, loud sound of a family laughing together. Mark's back still ached from hard labor, but his heart was completely light. Because every time he looked at that glass jar on the counter, he knew he was the richest man alive.